Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to round 6 of the Chris Knott Insurance Touring Car Championship. We are here at Silverstone in the 156 WTCC car. It's one of my personal favourites. It's near 500 horsepower going to the rear wheels from that 4-cylinder engine. Only weighs about a tonne as well. It sounds like a recipe for absolute disaster, but these cars look absolutely beautiful to drive around this Silverstone circuit. If you go back to our pre-season testing, the drivers, this was a particular favourite of the drivers, and we're on board with Barry Clayton, who improves his lap. Currently P4 goes 2 minutes 0.6 seconds. Yeah, very nice lap there from Barry. It's currently Andrew Whitehead on pole with a 158.6. George Battersby is challenging him at the moment, about half a second down. He is currently on an outlap with a little bit of traffic behind him. I believe that is the car of Will Inglis. It isn't. Who is that on circuit with him? I will find out in just a moment. In fact, we see Barry Clayton there has had a bit of an off and has to return to the pits. Rob Whitney has just recently joined the session, come to the end of his lap now. As we see a very aggressive line through the Vale chicane there for Rob as he barrels it down towards the start-finish straight to complete his lap, and it will be a 2 minute 2 dead there. So that is still P6 for Rob Whitney at the moment. We've got around about 10 minutes left in this session, so plenty of time to get a competitive lap in the top of the grid there. Which is the Alan Matthews back out on track now as he heads down towards Brooklands. That long straight leading into the harsh braking zone. They're very easy to get the car upset. We saw in the Giulietta TCR series many cars getting, or the Giulietta TCR part of the series I should say, many cars getting unhappy into that braking zone there, but these cars seem to be a little bit more controllable at the moment as we go back on board with Rob Whitney, who's just set a personal best Sector 1. We'll be able to carry that through to the second sector there, the complex Maggot and Beckett section of the track. Where a lot of time can be made or lost there. Perhaps an overtaking opportunity in the race as well. As he heads down towards turn 9 then, it is another personal best sector for Rob Whitney, I believe. That was my mistake. He hasn't actually hit the marking for the sector yet. My apologies there. Let's just see Will Harper. It looks like it's had a bit of an off. Will Harper, unfortunately, currently not available on my camera system for some reason. That was what I was trying to get mended during the pre-stream there. It ran over a little bit, obviously, so apologies for the delay in the start to the stream. I was trying to get the camera system to work there, but it is not a personal best for Rob Whitney at this time. And in fact, it is we're seeing no personal best for the leaders up front then. So maybe the track rubbering in, still not quite enough for these two to have a bit of a battle with each other. George Battersby currently in P2 with a 159.2 then. He's got a little bit of clean air, so hopefully he will be able to carry on in this little qualifying stint then. Maybe push towards Andrew Whitehead's time there. Currently two average sectors for George on this occasion. The soft tyres obviously being used in this qualifying session. Maybe they are struggling at a high load circuit such as Silverstone to carry the performance into a second qualifying lap. We will see if that is a trend as we head into the final stages of this qualifying session. And George Battersby chooses to stay out on this set of tyres then. So obviously a lot of performance can be brought out of these tyres if you are brave enough at this circuit. You do have to be pretty brave. Some of these high-speed corners, especially with this amount of power, can really upset the cars. We see him taking a lot of curb there, the car getting up on two wheels. That was actually a bit of a better lap for George. My timing system didn't quite say that for some reason, but he's now within half a second there as Andrew Whitehead on the final part of his lap set a purple Sector 3, but unfortunately Sector 1 and Sector 2 weren't competitive enough to extend that lead out in pole position for the moment. George Battersby then navigating through the tighter corners before he gets to breathe a little bit down that long straight up towards turn 9. Again, it's another corner that requires a lot of bravery. That fast right-hander leading into the Maggots-Beckett complex, where you've really got to have a lot of faith in the front end of the car and a lot of faith in your tyres. You don't want to overwork them on the previous laps, and of course it's an opportunity to overwork them for the later stages of the lap. As we see then the car bouncing over the curbs, tyres clipping through the front wings just a little bit as he heads through the Maggots-Beckett complex. The car looking really nice, really compliant this 156 WTCC car. And I'm sure George Brook-Batters, we were hoping for a little bit of a tow down these long straights. As powerful as these cars are, that little bit of slipstreaming is always helpful. As we see Rosie Hodson, who is, again, unfortunately, not currently available in-game to me. Looks like has had a bit of an incident on this occasion. Heading towards the end of the lap then with George Brook-Batters, but he heads through Vale, looking nice and tidy. Will it be quick enough down the start-finish straight to make a bit of headway towards Andrew Whitehead? It isn't on this occasion, unfortunately. He stays P2 with a 1:59.4. So at the moment it is Andrew Whitehead on provisional pole. And we have just seen that Colin Kennedy has entered the session. I'm not sure if it will give us any camera at this point in time. As we see, Guy Swarbrick's actually just set a personal best at 2:01.6 for Guy Swarbrick then. That is P8. I will give you a bit of a rundown on the people currently not available in this session. It is Steve Knight in P9, Rosie Hodson P10, Will Harper P11. He is currently on for a personal best Sector 1. And then Colin Kennedy has joined the session and on his outlap has set a purple Sector 2 on his outlap. So we are on for a very nice performance from Colin Kennedy, I believe. On board then with Andrew Whitehead, our current pole position sitter, as he navigates through Sector 1 and down the Wellington Straight. It is Rob Whitney behind, enjoying a little bit of a tow. Not sure what quite happened there. It's not Rob Whitney, actually, my apologies. It's Alan Matthews, who reasonably similar liveries there. Got to be caught out just on that occasion as he heads through Brooklands. Again, you wanted to carry as much of it as possible there to set you up for the long straight, but of course you go a little bit too greedy, you'll find yourself quickly in that gravel. We do like a gravel trap. It's much better than some of the more modern circuits where you see huge amounts of tarmac runoff. It really provides a challenge for the drivers there. Will Harper has finally showed up on my system there and goes P5, improving his time there with a it's a 2 minute flat for Will Harper, 2 minute 0.6 rather. In fact, that's an identical time to Barry Clayton in P4 ahead, so that was an interesting lap. Hopefully they will carry on that battle into the races. We have a double header this weekend here at Silverstone. And Colin Kennedy is currently on his fast lap. He set a purple Sector 1 on his first time out. Will he be able to carry on that impressive Sector 2 performance that we saw on his outlap? We can only hope. As Alan Matthews actually sets a personal best Sector, or not only a personal best, it is a best Sector 2. There he goes, purple with a 52.8 for Alan Matthews, currently running P3. As Rob Whitney improves to go P6 there, Alan Matthews actually carries on that performance to improve and go P2 with a 1:59 flat there for Alan Matthews. Leapfrogs George Brook-Battersby to take P2. George now running P3. He is currently not on an amazing lap, is George. It's a yellow Sector 1 so far. Meanwhile, Colin Kennedy is coming towards the end of his lap. I'll try and see if I can pick him up on track a little bit, but he's currently running 2 purple sectors, is Colin Kennedy. And Colin goes fastest with a 1:58.3, takes provisional pole with less than 5 minutes to go in the session. Blistering lap for his first time out. I'm sure that was a bit of a shock for Andrew Whitehead and Alan Matthews, who were looking fairly comfortable for quite a while, and George Brook-Battersby for that matter, were looking fairly comfortable for quite a while at the top of the order there, as we see Will Inglis getting out of the way just in the nick of time for Colin on his fast lap. Does the same for Barry Clayton as well, so that they can carry on down the circuit then. It is not a personal best for Colin on this occasion. Imagine those tyres a little bit too warm, maybe crying out for a bit of relief on this second attempt. As we have Alan Matthews currently behind Andrew Whitehead. These two are competing for position in qualifying at the moment. Will their proximity on track provide a bit of an issue for them towards the end of this qualifying session as they start fighting for track position to make those all-important tenths with so little opportunity left before we head into race 1? As we join Guy Swarbrick, currently running P10, he has set a personal best Sector 2 at 54.1. And that's actually on his outlap at the moment, so he is looking primed and ready for another attempt at the fast lap. He'll be looking to get ahead of Paul Milburn, maybe push towards Will Inglis and Rob Whitney, currently in the pits, getting ready for the final attempts in qualifying then. As we see, Will Harper was running very nicely indeed on his previous lap, setting a 2 minutes 0.4, a couple of tenths improvement for him there. And unfortunately my time system hasn't updated with his running so far in this race, on this attempt, as he comes across the line for the Sector 1 time then. Rather, this is outlap, ignore me on that one then. That will explain that. Colin did actually, on that previous lap, set a personal best Sector 3. Sector 1 and Sector 2 weren't quite up there, unfortunately, on that occasion, though. As he heads down the Wellington Straight now, then. And it is pretty much neck and neck with his best Sector 1. Only 0.05 of a second slower. So this should spur him on towards his final attempt at the lap. He will not. Actually, he won't get another attempt, so this is his very final attempt at the lap. Drivers like Andrew Whitehead and Alan Matthews may get another attempt, but it may be too little too late in terms of tyres. Only 3/10 separating Andrew Whitehead and Colin Kennedy, so if Andrew sets an absolute blinder in this Sector 3, he might be able to get it done, but it looks like Sector 1 and Sector 2 aren't quite there this time round, and with only 30 seconds to go, it will be his very last attempt as he crosses the line now and starts another lap. Same case for Alan Matthews. George Battersby is currently in the pits, so unfortunately will not be able to set another time. Colin Kennedy's actually just set a purple Sector 2 on this lap, so I was saying Sector 1 wasn't amazing, but it was pretty much his best so far, actually. This looks like it could be a very nice lap for Colin indeed. Heading into Vale then, flames spitting out the back of this 156 WTCC car. And on the upshift as well. Always like a bit of flames as we see him using a little bit of curb. Not too aggressive though, it can upset the car on corner exit. And he improves his time even more, a 158.1, nearly 158 flat for Colin, with only a few laps on the board. Only 4 laps for Colin, and he sets a 158.1, nearly half a second, just over, in fact, half a second faster than competition. Will Inglis improves his time at the very end of the session there to go P5, a 159.5. Alan Matthews currently on for a nice lap as well. Green Sector 1 for him this time round. It doesn't look like Andrew Whitehead has another fast lap attempt in him, unfortunately. With Sector 1 not looking very competitive, maybe a bit of an error there that we didn't quite catch. But it's Alan Matthews then who is the man to watch. Can he get past Andrew Whitehead, currently running P2? As he heads through the Magnus Beckett complex. He set that personal best Sector 1. Can he carry that momentum forward through this difficult part of the circuit with his tyres not looking particularly happy? Unfortunately, that doesn't look like it's going to happen. One's a little bit too wide there. Maybe the tyres coming to the end of their life in qualifying then, and he cuts the corner, and that will invalidate his lap, unfortunately. So that brings an end to Alan Matthews' qualifying fight. It will be P3 for him for the moment. See, actually, Will Harper is currently on another fast lap himself. It's yellow Sector 1, but green Sector 2, so he may be able to claw back a position or two if he makes up enough time in this final sector, heading through Vale. Again, not too greedy with the curbs. These drivers maybe realising this car isn't entirely happy. Not many cars are with such aggressive curbs here at Silverstone. And he does improve his time. I'm not sure if that P4 was due to someone leaving, but he does improve to go 1.2 seconds off pole. That is a 159.9. So he's broken the 2-minute barrier. Well done to Will. The very end of the session there to improve his time. But it is currently Colin Kennedy on pole, Andrew Whitehead running second, and Alan Matthews running third. George Battersby running fourth, and I believe, although I'll have to double check on the grid, Will Inglis running fifth. So that rounds up qualifying. That was a very nice session that should lead into some great action here at the doubleheader in Silverstone. We'll catch you in a couple of minutes for the start of the race in action. And welcome back to the action, ladies and gentlemen. We are here at Silverstone for round 6 of the Chris Knott Insurance Touring Car Championship at Silverstone. Pretty sure I just mentioned that twice then, but we are lined up on the grid. Well, most of us are lined up on the grid. It's 2 grids at the moment. See a large gap between some of our competitors there. Not quite sure what's going on, but it's less than 30 seconds until lights out. And it's Colin Kennedy, our current championship leader, on pole. Andrew Wyatt running 2nd. Alan Matthews running 3rd. George Brook-Battersby running 4th. It's been quite interesting. And Matt Daley has joined the session. Obviously, a very, very fast driver. He wasn't able to qualify, but joins us for the race. Let's see how he can push his way through the grid as we hear the revs rise. It is 6 red lights on the gantry. And we are away. Andrew Wyatt looks like he got a very nice launch there. He closes in on Colin Kennedy just a little bit then. George Brook-Battersby also benefiting from a decent launch as we head down towards turn 1. Looks like Will Inglis is fancying putting the nose up behind Alan Matthews there. See Alan Matthews actually worming his way through, or rather defending from Will Inglis. George Brook-Battersby not getting the best start there, currently running P5. Matt Daley has already caught up, now P6 ahead of Barry Clayton, who has got Will Harper to fight as we head down the Wellington straight. We see Guy Swarbrick and Paul Millman swapping places there. Guy Swarbrick maybe not quite getting it right as Rosie Hodgson overtakes as well. It looks like Steve Knight fancies a move in a second, but he is currently battling with Jack Hodgson by the looks of it. Was that? I'm not quite sure, unfortunately, but Colin Kennedy as heading round Brooklands now then has got over a second lead to Andrew Wyatt behind, with Alan Matthews again about a second behind him. As we see Will Inglis getting it a little bit wrong on the exit there. That allows George Brook-Battersby to catch up a little bit, but he is under pressure from Matt Daley as we head down towards turn 9. Matt Daley is carrying so much more speed through that corner. He's quickly found himself on the rear axle of George Brook-Battersby as we head now down towards Maggots and Beckett's. My voice has pretty much recovered from a couple of weeks ago. It took a little while, but it's mostly here, but apologies if we still have a few issues on my side. Not the type of technical difficulty that we usually used to, but it is still Colin Kennedy out in the lead. And Will Inglis is now under pressure from George Brook-Battersby, who is also under pressure from Matt Daley. So we've got a nice little battle for 3rd forming up here, rather 4th. This early stage. We see Barry Clayton is also trying to push towards Matt Daley. Barry Clayton's got a very nice bit of pace behind him and under braking there. Very, very elbows out. And that would have been a nice move if he had made it stuck, but we head down towards Vale now. Then he's a lot earlier on the brakes than Matt Daley. He was very confident in there. We see Will Inglis has got it a little bit wrong there. That allows George Brook-Battersby to come up alongside him as we head round the final corner and we start another lap. Colin Kennedy and Andrew Wyatt have separated themselves out from a field a little bit as we see George Brook-Battersby getting ahead of Will Inglis, as does Matt Daley, who Will Inglis now running P6 then, so that wasn't the end of the lap that he would have wanted. He's thinking about a move back on Matt Daley heading through turn 3. As we see Will Harper also sweeping into view there. Barry Clayton is putting pressure on him as we head down towards the Wellington straight. There is a train forming for P4 effectively if this battling carries on, and I am all for that. As we see Paul Millman allowing Guy Swarbrick to get past there. I'm not sure if there was a little bit of an incident involved or Guy Swarbrick was able to make easy pickings there, but Colin Kennedy is keeping that gap to P2 pretty much consistent there. These two rather walking away from the rest of the field, it seems. Matt Daley still within a second of George Brook-Battersby as we head down towards turn 9. And Will Inglis actually even closer than that. As we head down towards Maggots and Beckett's, we can see Colin Kennedy and Andrew Wyatt heading through there. Andrew Wyatt's made a little bit of headway towards Colin, but not quite as much as he would have wanted through that complex. That complex is a point on the track which you can make up a lot of time. Drivers can get it wrong by carrying a little bit too much speed and washing out wide. Matt Daley may have been putting pressure on George to do that as we head towards turn 15. We see Paul Millman also in the slipstream of Guy Swarbrick heading down to that same corner. George Brook-Battersby is now heading down towards Vale, with Will Harper close behind Will Inglis then. Pretty much the same delta between those two drivers. This train looks like it could go on for a lot longer into this race, and I'm all for that. As we see Andrew Whitehead sets the fastest lap of the race so far, trying to make a little bit of headway towards Colin Kennedy. Then the gap is less than a second now. Will he able to carry this momentum into the middle stage of this race and put some pressure on him? Everyone running the soft tyres in this race, apart from Paul Millman and Rosie Hodson. So we could see, I nearly said Reeve Taylor as well, but Reeve Taylor hasn't changed his tyres because Reeve Taylor is currently talking about said race in the pits, according to the game. But yes, Andrew Whitehead less than a second behind Colin Kennedy down that straight. All-important slipstream could make a huge difference as we head down towards Brooklands then. Who's going to be brave under braking? Could be a lot of time found here, or it could go all wrong. You see the brake disc glowing red hot as such a high energy part of this circuit puts those brakes under good use. Just over half a second now then for Andrew Whitehead. This has been a blistering start to the lap for him as he enters Sector 2 now. Heading down towards Turn 9. Will he put pressure on Colin Kennedy? Colin Kennedy able to stay so level-headed under times of immense pressure, as we see Matt Daley getting past George Brook-Battersby on the exit of the Brooklands complex. Then he's very close. Will he think about a move around the outside under braking? He doesn't. He backs away from it on this occasion and may think about settling into his race, trying to keep hold of P5, but it is Colin Kennedy and Andrew Whitehead heading through Magus Beckett's complex then. Colin running his car out as wide as he dares there, getting two wheels onto the curb. Andrew Whitehead not doing that, carrying a little bit more speed down the back straight there, the Hamilton straight. As we head into turn 15, looks like his car's running a very aggressive setup in terms of ride height. There we see the wheels poking through the front wings. This is, of course, an open setup championship, so that allows the drivers to tweak the car to best suit their needs and will provide us with differences in areas like high-speed corners and this straight. Less than half a second between these two drivers as we start another lap. And Andrew Whitehead running very nicely on this circuit, as we've seen on a couple of occasions in the past there. Over half a second faster on that previous lap there, 157.9. That would have been the fastest lap in qualifying had he set that in the previous session. And it was 2 purple sectors actually for Andrew, so he is really enjoying the Silverstone circuit, and we can see that difference in setup maybe showing its head. Maybe it's just the slipstream working to his advantage, but in the speed traps he was about 3 miles an hour faster than Colin on that previous lap. In fact, for the entirety of this race so far, Colin about 161 miles an hour. Andrew setting about 164, and he thinks about a move down the inside into Brooklands under braking there. And that was very brave from Andrew. It wasn't going to work, unfortunately. Colin has his wits about him and was able to defend. Very nice defensive manoeuvre from Colin there. In fact, those two showing a lot of respect to each other as we head into Sector 2 then. And that gap stays about the same. It opens up a little bit towards Colin's favour there. But these two are in an absolute league of their own. Even in this battling, they have built up pretty much an 8-second gap. With Matt Daley currently running P3, he has worked his way up the grid nicely. Alan Matthews has defended very well, got past George Brook-Battersby, currently running P4, who is a little bit behind, about half a second. Again, those gaps staying pretty much the same as we see in the foreground there. Andrew Whitehead coming up a little bit closer to Colin once again. This is a very nice battle for first, it's a very nice battle for third currently going on. This looks like, as I've mentioned already in this race, it looks like it could go on for quite a while. In fact, we're seeing groups of drivers who are on a similar pace to each other, who are in nice little battles. We see Will Inglis and Barry Clayton battling it out for P6 as they head down the Hamilton straight then. Barry Clayton trying to use that slipstream to his advantage there. 165 miles an hour in the speed trap for Barry there. That allows him to edge ever closer to Will Inglis. But speaking of getting closer to the car in front, it is Andrew Whitehead heading down the start-finish straight. That wasn't the best lap for him. Colin was just a little bit quicker, probably as a result of that battle in Sector 2 heading down towards Brooklands, but it is the first part of the lap that Andrew will be concentrating on, as he is only just half a second, a little bit more than that actually, behind the race leader Colin Kennedy. We've seen these two in the Touring Car Series battle it out in the first 5 rounds. Unfortunately, I've only seen 3 of those 5 rounds, but we hope that carries on here in round 6. These two drivers give each other a lot of respect, give each other just enough space on track, but not too much though. We get plenty of action between these two, and that shows in the standing. Is Colin currently running P1 in the championship, with Andrew Whitehead closely behind, about 30 points separating these two drivers, and with so many races to go, it is anyone's game at the moment. Speaking of the 2 championships, it is currently Rob Whitney in P8, who is our AM Championship leader. He is doing very nicely in this race, currently running P8 and a few seconds clear of his competitors, so he should be on for a good result. As we see Colin and Andrew heading through the Magus Beckett complex there, it looks like that is, I believe, Jack Hodson, who will have to will hopefully get out of the way for these two drivers. He looks like he is struggling with the car just a little bit through the Magus Beckett complex. It is such a difficult part of this circuit, and if it's a car that you're not entirely familiar with, it will provide you with some difficulties. We see him getting out of the way nicely there, so well done to Jack for that. About just over half a second once again separating these two. They're doing a very nice job to keep the delta so close for such a long period of time. We are 10 minutes into this race then, and it looks like this battle isn't letting up at all. But yeah, as I mentioned, it can be quite difficult to get familiar with a car, especially in this series. One of its, I argue, most enjoyable features is that the car changes up every round between the three, the 156 WTCC, the Giulietta TCR, and the Alpha 75 touring car. Three cars with very differing driver dynamics, very differing setups, and hugely different characteristics there that provide the drivers with a challenge, because they can't get too comfortable with any one car at any one track. The last time we were at Silverstone was, of course, in the Giulietta TCR, and they were a sight to behold around here, as is any touring car. The front wheels getting so much load put through them. You're seeing a lot of locking up, a lot of tyres screaming, begging for mercy. As we see Andrew Whitehead very late on the braking into Brooklands there. Only 2 tenths separating now. He looked at a move around the outside there. Colin maybe playing it a little bit safe, maybe trying to scare Andrew behind him. It is one tactic. More a GT tactic, I'd say that is. Maybe if we carry on with the GT tactics, we'll start to see drivers with their lights on, flashing their lights, as we do see with Alan Matthews currently running P4, about a second clear of George Brooks Battersby. He's running a nice race so far. He's allowed Matt Daley to get ahead just a little bit, but as we've seen so many times in this championship, the race can surely turn on its head there, and we could see Alan Matthews back on the podium through a little bit of an error perhaps from Matt Daley, or just some misfortunes. We've seen Matt Daley's car already looking like it could be struggling with the front end just a little bit. He's having to run a lot of steering lock through turn 9. So maybe those soft tyres not quite able to make it the entire race distance at full chat. It's one thing that the drivers will have to watch out for. Sector 2 wasn't looking amazing for Andrew Whitehead at the start there. The gap was edging ever closer to a second, but he has brought it back in Sector 3 as they head through Vale now. Just over half a second separating them, as we've seen on the past few laps. Again, there, Andrew Whitehead, it looks like his car is a little bit faster down the straight. Let's see how that change in setup plays to his hand later on into the race. Maybe the tyre wear will be a little bit different between the two. Maybe they aren't running a different setup. Maybe it is just down to driving style. Colin Kennedy does of course provide a base setup very graciously for all of the drivers, and it's very good. I used it a few weeks back, actually, in the Formula Alpha practice sessions in the Formula Alpha Championship at Zandvoort, and it was a brilliant setup. I found just a couple of seconds just by changing from the default setup. That was very enjoyable to try out. I love to give one of these touring cars a go, actually, as we head down the Wellington Straight with the two race leaders into Brooklands. Then the gap stays pretty much the same. Wasn't quite the challenge that we've seen on a couple of occasions from Andrew this time around. Maybe he's choosing to play it safe. Maybe he might think about backing off just a little bit as we enter kind of the middle stages of this race and preserve his tyre life towards the end. If he does that, he might have the upper hand on Colin, maybe able to work the race, work the strategy to his favour. But yeah, these two running away just a little bit. Matt Daley's been able to keep them pretty much honest in terms of lap times. He's been very similar in terms of pace. Now he's got through the rest of the traffic, about a second separating them, as it has been for the past 10 or so minutes now. And we see another 4-second gap between Alan Matthews and George Brooks Battersby from them and P1. Barry Clayton is not entirely devoid of pressure from Willingless behind. Willingless, very fast driver, catching up to Barry Clayton as we head into the Magus Beckett section there. It wasn't the best Sector 1 for Willingless. Apologies for the small delay there. I accidentally clicked off the timing system there, which wasn't entirely helpful at this stage in the race. But yeah, Barry Clayton hasn't had to worry too much about Willingless on this occasion. Neither has Colin Kennedy, although I'm sure he's still feeling the pressure. He was about 4 tenths quicker on the previous lap about 4 tenths quicker than Andrew Whitehead. And now builds that gap up to about a second, so Andrew may be starting to think about preserving his tyres to push towards Colin. In the later stages, we've got just over 10 minutes to go in this race, and the drivers are starting to find a little bit of cleaner air at this point. As we see, it looks like Jack Hodson yielding for some drivers ahead there, as we see him spinning out as on the entry into Vale there, or rather on the exit. So not quite working out for him this race. As we see Paul Millman defending from Will Harper. Will Harper about 3 seconds faster on this occasion. Paul Millman on the mediums then, so we may see Will Harper getting past as he does there, owing to a tyre advantage, but that could quickly switch back into Paul's favour. Paul Millman currently in the AND Championship, doing a very nice job in terms of the point standings there. But yeah, we could see those medium tyres start to play into his hands in the later stages of this race. We're not far from the latter part of this race now. But yeah, we saw in last week's Formula Alpha series, actually, the medium tyres, admittedly it was at a street circuit, Singapore, the medium tyres, you're just not able to get enough temp into them, and that doesn't give you a lot of performance, doesn't give you a lot of confidence in the tyres, but did, towards the end of the race, look to have the advantage in terms of durability. The softs not quite able to make it, and maybe that is what we're seeing here in the race in the 156s, because we'll see a little bit of lag there with the server. I hope that doesn't affect too many people's races. We saw the delta, in fact we're getting a lot of lag by the looks of this here. We saw the delta between Colin and Andrew go down to about a tenth, and that got me quite excited there, but it wasn't to be the case, unfortunately. Although Andrew was quicker on that previous go around. Yeah, Will Harper building a little bit of a gap, enters the points now. Currently running P10. Maybe he will be thinking about catching up to Guy Swarbrick and bringing it home P9, setting himself up nicely for the reverse grid race coming up in a little while. But yes, I'll be surprised if the soft tyres can make it towards the end of this race without too much complaining. Silverstone puts so much load through that, especially that front left tyre, it being a clockwise circuit at such a high speed as well. Will Harper actually taking his best lap of the race so far, a 2:03. That is actually not far off his best qualifying lap, so he's starting to find a bit of a groove now that the fuel loads start to get a little bit lighter, even on those soft tyres. He's got a lot of running in this car at this circuit now. I'm sure he'll be feeling much more confident going into race 2. As we see George Battersby still putting some pressure on Alan Matthews. He's showing Alan that P4 isn't quite secure yet, and that is something that we are looking forward to seeing. See Alan Matthews running quite wide on the exit of turn 9 there, trying to carry as much speed as possible. But maybe those tyres starting to complain now, as we see Andrew Whitehead still within that second range of Colin Kennedy, as he has done for so long. He's done a very good job of that, but not quite able to push towards him. Doesn't quite have the pace consistently enough, doesn't quite have a big enough advantage to make a secure enough move. You've seen him at a couple of points, has attempted a move, but just hasn't had enough of a delta in his favour to make it stick, as we see him using as much of the track as he possibly can there. The gap between P4 and P5 also staying fairly similar as they head towards Vale. George Battersby getting ever so closer under braking, and as they start, get ready to start the next lap, the exit of the final corner will make all the difference, as we see Alan Matthews revving his car up to about 7,500 revs there to try and edge away from George Battersby, and they set pretty much identical lap times, 200ths of a second separating them, only 4/10ths of a second separating them on track now. Will Harper does get past Guy Swarbrick for P9 as they head into Vale. George Battersby get an overtake. Does he get an overtake done? He does get it secured heading into turn 3, and he gets it done through turn 4, secures it in turn 5 then. At the same time that Will Harper was looking to get past Guy Swarbrick, but Guy Swarbrick is quick to make a switch back and take back P9. So that shows that Will Harper is going to have to work for this if he wants it to stick as they start their next lap there. He sticks it on the inside line there. They don't come together. It looks fairly close at one point as they head round turn 4 now. And through turn 5, they are side by side. Will Harper getting the better exit there to take P9 from Guy Strawbrick this time around. Guy Strawbrick does have the slipstream now as they head down the Wellington straight down towards Brooklands. Turn 6, turn 7, so much time can be lost there if you get the line even slightly wrong. You can either find yourself in the gravel track or just not carrying enough speed, and you'll see your opposition just hanging it around the inside like it is no one's business, but it looks to be that Will Harper is secure enough in P9. As we see, George has got past Alan Matthews as they're heading through the Maggots-Beckett complex, and that gap is about half a second, so not entirely secure yet. As we see, Alan Matthews is absolutely flying down that back straight, edging ever closer in that slipstream as they head through turn 15 now. Once again, we see a very aggressive setup on George Brook Battersby's car as they head through Vale. A little bit of time can be found as we see Alan Matthews demonstrating beautifully there, actually. If you are a little bit cheeky with the track limits and brave enough, you can make just a little bit of time on the exit of turn 15 by riding it along the curbs. One of the few big tarmac runoffs here at Silverstone. Of course, we'd have to have some with modern safety legislation and such high speeds. It would be silly not to. Of course, some drivers will be hoping for a Monaco-style kind of track, a little bit of curb and then wall, but that would never work at such a circuit. Although it would make for some good virtual racing, I am sure. And with around about 5 minutes to go, it is still Colin Kennedy in the lead for the moment. He has been under pressure from Andrew Wyatt for the entire race, but has stayed very calm and has reaped the rewards of that, really. He is, although has been under pressure, at no point has it looked kind of untidy, has it looked like it could be in any major jeopardy. A few attempts were made, but he dealt with them so well that he has... doesn't look like he's been breaking too much of a sweat. As we see, Andrew Whitehead looks like he is breaking a bit of a sweat, trying to carry as much pace as possible, runs a little bit wide, cutting the rafters a little bit, saving the groundskeepers a little bit of a job as they head into Maggots-Beckett. And he gets a little bit closer on the Wellington straight, actually. They're going to be around about half a second between the two drivers as they enter turn 15. Could this be one of Andrew's final attempts to head into Vale? It looks like the car got a little bit away from him under braking though. I'm not sure if that was a lockup or getting fairly close to a lockup, but he has actually gained on him again. Maybe Colin losing a little bit of time on the exit edges ever closer as we head down towards Vale. Less than half a second separating them now. But it stays pretty much the same. Oh no, gets even closer as we head down the start-finish straight now then. Andrew Whitehead ragging that car within an inch of its life down the start-finish straight as they head in towards turn 1. Will he think about a move up the inside line? He doesn't. He stays behind, tries to enjoy as much of that slipstream as possible before the twisty Sector 1, setting himself up for a good exit onto the Wellington straight. I am sure that the gap extends to about half a second again between these two drivers. It must be so frustrating for Andrew Whitehead. He has the pace. And he gets a little bit of oversteer actually through turn 4. That could be his undoing as we head into the final couple of laps of this race. It's only about half a second still, so it wasn't amazing, but that could have been it. What if that was his chance to make an overtake here on the entry into Brooklands? If he had not made that little bit of oversteer, I don't think it affected him too much, though. At this stage of the race, maybe we are starting to see these softs dropping off in terms of performance a little bit, as we see Rosie Hodson on the outside there doing a very nice job of getting out of the way as quickly as she can. It's not an ideal place to be blue flag traffic there, so props to her for getting out of the way in an effective as manner as she could to allow these two to carry on battling, and they do as they head into turn 9. Then less than half a second separating them as we go down towards Maggots-Beckett. It could be won or lost here. Andrew Whitehead gets a much better exit as we head into Maggots-Beckett. They are pretty much side by side. He dips in behind again, though it wasn't quite close enough, and it looks like Colin Kennedy is a little bit more confident through Maggots-Beckett, and he gains a couple tenths on him again. Must be pure frustration for Andrew in the cockpit. He's doing an almighty job to put this much pressure on at this stage in the race after doing such an impressive drive. But he will have to set himself up again as we enter the final few laps of the race now. This will be the penultimate lap coming up now, and it has rather dropped away from him on the final half of this lap, about 7 tenths. I say dropped away from him. The fact that they are still 7 tenths after so long in this race is a very impressive feat, and he gets ever closer through Vale again. So we are starting to see these drivers kind of battle each other in different parts of the track. Andrew has certainly got strengths over Colin on different parts of the circuit. Only 700ths of a second separating them on that previous occasion. as George Battersby unfortunately has to enter the pit. I'm not sure if that is due to fuel or due to a mechanical failure or due to tyres or whatever reason, maybe a penalty. He finds himself having to enter the pits, and what a shame. That has rather been the undoing of what would otherwise been a very nice race for George. As we see Colin Kennedy's car getting a little bit unhappy through turn 4 then. Andrew Whitehead is able to carry so much more speed. They're going to be side by side as we head down towards Brooklands then. Underbraking, surely this is Andrew's final chance to make a move for P1. He does underbraking very nicely. He was a little bit late. Has he outbraked himself? It doesn't look like it. Colin Kennedy getting a little bit close underbraking there. He gets the inside line, which may not be ideal at this point in the race. He defends nicely, does Andrew Whitehead though, and on the exit able to claw a little bit of a delta between the two then, and turn 9 will be an all-important corner for Andrew then, as we head at full speed down towards this part of this circuit. Colin Kennedy got a little bit of a better exit. He closes up. The gap is still only 0.3 of a second, as we are now on the penultimate lap of this race, heading down towards Maggotts Beckett. Andrew Whitehead, after what has been the entire of the race in the lead for Colin, takes the lead on what is the penultimate lap. Can he stick it? Can he make it stay for the final lap of the race? Andrew was using as much of the track as he dares there, riding his car fully on the curbs. I don't believe he'll get a penalty for that or any type of warning. But we head down the Wellington Straight. Colin Kennedy enjoys the slipstream, as he hasn't had the opportunity to do for the entirety of this race actually, and so I'm sure it'll make a nice change for him. As we head through turn 15, only 3 tenths separating them still. And heading down towards Vale, Andrew Whitehead will be trying to defend as best he can under braking there. Whoever's braver under braking will secure themselves for the exit onto the start-finish straight, and it looks like Andrew Whitehead has done a very good job of that. Colin Kennedy's car getting away from it a little bit. We saw it was a little bit untidy on sector 1 of the previous lap, and it looks, or rather this lap, we now come on to the final lap of the race, and that looks like to be the case for the sector 3 there. Maybe he's worn those tyres out just a little bit too much, trying to keep the lead, but Andrew Whitehead has looks like lost a little bit of time in through sector 1, as we see Matt Daley's had to enter the pit as well. What a shame for Matt. It could be Alan Matthews' pole, but it's not that we are concentrating on. It is the battle for the lead there. Colin Kennedy getting very close to the rear bumper of Andrew Whitehead as we head down the Wellington Straight now. He hasn't been able to make a move. It looks like he was very close though. Colin Kennedy will be enjoying the slipstream again. It was at this point that Andrew Whitehead took the lead from Colin Kennedy, but he may be a little bit too far back for Colin to take that switch back and make the move again. We do have some lap traffic to deal with. Not at the most ideal point as it was the last time that these two got through some lapped traffic. But it was done very nicely there. Looks like Colin Kennedy's car is starting to really get away from him. Those tyres, not his friend at this point in the race. The gap is now about half a second. It could be all over for Colin, and he may have to settle for P2 after an immense drive in the lead for so long. It is Alan Matthews then currently running P3. Matt Daley is only a couple of seconds behind there. Will he have the advantage in terms of pace? He'll be on a fresh set of tyres, I can imagine. He may be able to claw it back at the very end there, but through Maggotts and Beckett, Colin Kennedy has gained just a little bit. Will that set him up nicely enough for the long back straight in the slipstream? Will that set him up through turn 15 to make the move again? Turn 15 and Vale are his best opportunities, it must be said, on this final lap here. And that was very nicely executed for Andrew through turn 15. Colin is so close, only about 2 tenths separating them though. He has a better run and underbraking into Vale. Will he get the move done? It wasn't quite to be, unfortunately. He has to ride up onto the curves, and they come together through Vale, the penultimate corner. Who will yield? We'll see the traffic unlapping itself there. It looks like they both believe they are to blame almost. Very, very good sportsmanship between the two drivers there. Colin believing that he was at fault, Andrew maybe believing he was at fault as well, but that brings an end to what was an otherwise amazing battle between these drivers for the entire race. Andrew Whitehead takes P1, Colin Kennedy taking home P2 after an immense battle. These two, I imagine, will do a parade lap side by side after what was a brilliant bit of racing between those two. The utmost respect between the two drivers at all times, despite how close they were, how critical this race was in the championship battle. Less than 30 points separating them now then, as we head towards race 2, the reverse grid race part of this weekend. Alan Matthews taking home P3 after those misfortunes for Matt Daley and Barry Clayton. Or not Barry Clayton, rather, it was George Battersby who had to enter the pits as well. Barry Clayton taking home P5 there. William Bliss taking home P6. George Battersby ends the race in P7. What was otherwise a very solid race came undone in the pits, as it did for Matt Daley then. Will Harper struggling with the car a little bit on the exit there, maybe trying to do a bit of fuel conservation at that type of speed, taking home P8. Paul Millman taking home P9 to take the AM race win. Gijs Robic taking home P10. That's certainly an exciting race one. Well done to these two drivers here, Colin Kennedy and Andrew Wright, for an immense battle. I am all for these two carrying on this battle into the reverse grid race as they try and push their way through the field. That reverse grid race is coming up in just a moment, so don't go anywhere. I'll see you in a few minutes for the final part of the racing action here at Silverstone. I will see you in just a moment. And that is the wrong holding screen. It is round 6 at Silverstone, but we're not in Juliet TCRs. You're looking for these cars here. And welcome back to the action here at Silverstone, ladies and gentlemen. We have just under a minute to go until lights out for race 2. After the excitement of race 1, we are all ready to go again here for the reverse grid race. It is Will Harper on pole. George Brook-Betterby, after that disappointment with the pitting issues there, is currently running P2. He should be on for a very nice result here indeed. As should Matt Daley running P6. Barry Clayton as well. Currently P3 according to this, although that looks to be P4 to my eyes. And a bit of clarification on the separated grid issue. It looks like that is just a new feature of the championship, maybe. I'll have to double check that with organiser Guy Swarbrick, or maybe just a separation because of the circuit, but that is the Pro and Am classes being separated on the grid. But with less than 10 seconds to go, we hear the revs rising. What will Andrew and Colin do? Will they carry that battle on through this race? It is 6 red lights on the gantry. And we are away. Will Harper getting a nice launch, as does George Brook-Betterby, in fact, getting an amazing launch there, much better than his competitors. He takes P1 heading into turn 1, or he does. It wasn't quite as close as I thought, though, and Will Harper and George Brook-Betterby into turn 1 come together and take themselves off track. That is Will Inglis then currently fighting to defend P1 from Matt Daley. Matt Daley has had a very nice start to this race as a result of other people's misfortunes. Hangs it round the outside of T5 rather. And is T4 that was side by side with Will Inglis as they head down the Wellington Straight, but he runs out a little bit too wide there, cutting the grass a little bit, and has to concede back down to P2 there. Alan Matthews rather is now on the tail of Matt Daley. Colin Kennedy has found his way up to P5. Meanwhile, Rob Whitney, it's Andrew Whitehead, in fact, I couldn't find him because they are so close together, heading through Brooklands. They are side by side, these two looking ready to carry on that battle that we saw in race 1. On the exit of turn 8 then, Colin Kennedy edges out just a little bit ahead, but Andrew Whitehead will be putting the pressure on heading into turn 9 then. Barry Clayton is close behind them as well. Colin Kennedy heading to catch Alan Matthews in front then, less than half a second separating them. He'll be trying to focus on getting through up towards the podium, but Andrew Whitehead will be having none of that if he has anything to say about it, as they head into Maggott and Beckett's then. 5 cars all fighting for track position. It is Will Inglis still in the lead at the moment. Matt Daley, after looking like he had the move for P1 secured, currently fighting to defend P2 from Alan Matthews, Colin Kennedy and Andrew Whitehead. For that fact, Andrew Whitehead has dipped off just a little bit, but Colin Kennedy is certainly putting pressure on Alan Matthews as they head into turn 15, looking for a move around the outside. Those brake discs glowing near enough white hot, carrying so much speed is Colin Kennedy, but he gets it all wrong on the exit, drops back to P6, allows Andrew Whitehead to come flying past, allows Barry Clayton to move up into P4, and Alan Matthews takes P3 with Steve Knight getting past Rosie Hodson, I believe, or yes, that is Rosie Hodson getting past there. Rosie Hodson maybe having a bit of an issue that forces her down into P11, unfortunately. Guy Swarbrick now running P10 ahead of her and putting pressure on Paul Mummel onto the start-finish straight then. 3 tenths separating P1 and P2, something that we got familiar with in the previous race and something that we are familiar with from lap 1 of this race. Long may that continue. Barry Clayton getting it a little bit wrong, unfortunately, into T1 and is currently now P7. As we see, the battling hasn't done a massive amount of favours for Colin and Andrew in terms of their race. Then they're a few seconds behind P1. Matt Daley is side by side Will Inglis as they head into Brooklands, and under braking very nicely gets the move done from behind. So well done to Matt to taking that P1 there. Will he be under pressure from Will Inglis? It doesn't look like he will on this occasion. Unfortunately for Will, about half a second separating them now. Matt Daley has that section of the track nailed, it must be said. Will Harper now getting past Rosie Hodson. Will, who was on pole at the start of the reverse grid race, this was his opportunity to claw back some good points from this weekend, but it hasn't quite worked out the way that he would have wanted. Actually, Andrew Whitehead then has got about a half a second lead on Colin Kennedy, the person who he was battling so hard with in race 1, but he will be focused on nothing but getting past Alan Matthews, and mistakes like that will be spurring him on, and in fact he carries so much more speed on corner exit there that he is now side by side and gets the move just about done as they head into turn 15, although he is vulnerable to Alan under braking. Will he fight back? There's about 3 tenths separating them. No, he's a little bit too far back on this occasion, and that is the exact situation that Andrew was probably hoping for. He's now got a little bit of a buffer between him and Colin. Alan Matthews is by no means a slow driver and will put up a fight against Colin. He knows how to battle with Colin well over the years, and that will allow Andrew to either focus on his own race or build that gap up a little bit more if he chooses to do so. As we see, Andrew Whitehead setting the fastest lap of the race so far, so that lap really did wonders for his race. Matt Daley then, having got past Will Inglis, has set an absolute flyer, a 158.5 on the previous lap, puts him 2.5 seconds ahead. Colin Kennedy gets past Alan Matthews though, heading through turn 4. And hangs it around the outside. Alan Matthews was actually able to get it back on the inside there, but Colin was carrying so much more speed. Alan Matthews actually really losing out there. George Brook-Battersby now putting pressure on him down the Wellington straight. They're all enjoying the slipstream, are Alan and George, as they head down towards Brooklands. They're going to be pretty much 3 wide by the looks of things. George very brave under braking there. Does make some contact with Alan though. That was very brave under braking on the inside line there. That could have gone very wrong. That could have been quite a considerable accident at those speeds, but luckily, thanks probably in no part to the really surprisingly good stability of this 156 WTCC car, these two are able to keep it clean and carry on. Well, keep it relatively clean and carry on. That has freed up Colin though. That's not the news that Andrew would have wanted. They're now about a second apart, and Colin, with the pace that he has demonstrated this weekend, I'm sure will close that up fairly shortly. So Andrew will be looking to get past Will Inglis, who's ran him a little bit wide off circuit. He will have lost an immense amount of time through Maggott and Beckett. Luckily not at the end of the complex though, so it shouldn't affect him too badly heading down the back straight. Although maybe it has. Colin able to hang it round the outside. They are now side by side heading down towards turn 15. Maggott and Beckett really didn't play into Andrew's hands as they head into turn 15. Will Andrew concede the position? He's going to try and fight for it as much as he can, but he has to in the end, unfortunately. About half a second separating them though, and moments like this could be race defining. We are still around about 20 minutes to go in this race, so it is anyone's game, although Matt Daley is looking fairly comfortable out in the lead for the moment. We saw actually, although he wasn't the huge kind of focus of race 1, for so long before that pit, he was running very nicely P3, pretty much on the pace of the leaders. So if the leaders from race 1 are having to battle their way through the pack for such a long period of time, we could find that Matt Daley is fairly secure out in P1 for the moment. Steve Knight getting past Paul Millman. Paul Millman, I believe, maybe having a couple errors there. George Brook-Battersby gets past both Andrew Whitehead and Colin Kennedy there. I'm not sure if that was a bit of an error, a bit of a coming together heading into turn 1 between the 3 drivers there, but this battle looks like a good one for all, and they make contact. Alan Matthews and Colin, it's not Colin Kennedy, no, that is not Colin Kennedy, it is Andrew Whitehead. There so many cars occupying the same amount of same part of the track at once. Under braking, Alan Matthews gets the move back on Andrew Whitehead there, defending with all of his might. And yeah, this is not the way that Andrew Whitehead wanted this part of the race, this part of the lap to start. He's found himself about just over a second behind Colin Kennedy, and on very few occasions in the previous race did we see the gap be that big between him and Colin. Colin now fighting to take back P3 from George. George, who came together with Will Harper on lap 1. That could have been the undoing of his race, but he has fought nicely. Didn't lose out too much as a result of that incident. Now running P3. Will he be able to keep Colin behind? It will be an almighty task if he is able to do it. But could be on for a nice result here. Colin is hanging it round the outside, as we saw him do on Andrew Whitehead on the previous time round. Setting himself up nicely for turn 15, as is Andrew Whitehead trying to get past Alan Matthews. Hopefully no contact between the two as they do so this time round. Carrying 166 miles an hour through the speed trap there. No, that isn't the case actually, ignore me on that one. But meanwhile, all of this is going on. Colin Kennedy has taken back P3 from George Brook-Battersby. Heading through Vale now, then he'll be focusing on trying to catch up with Will Inglis. Colin showing a mighty pace here. It is Will Inglis' P2 to lose, it must be said, although he did set the best lap out of all of those drivers currently battling for the podium. We can pretty much include Barry Clayton in that. He is a few seconds behind, but we've seen so many coming together on the previous couple of laps that he could find himself in this kind of upper mid-pack. Yes, Will Inglis still setting a very nice lap of 159 there for Will, but Colin Kennedy is slowly hunting him down. That will be dragging George and Andrew Whitehead along with him. So no one is out of the count for now. We have still got plenty of this race to go. Just under 20 minutes at this stage, and everyone in the upper midfield is swapping positions here, there and everywhere. About 6 tenths between him and Will Inglis. Will Inglis has had a bit of a breather on the previous lap. I'm sure it hasn't felt that way though around this high-speed Silverstone circuit, but now has to work to keep the current championship leader behind him. As we see Alan Matthews running very wide through turn 9 there. That will cost him just a little bit of time, although he would have been able to carry so much more speed. See Andrew Whitehead closing up on George Battersby through Magnus Beckett. He had an immense amount of practice in race 1, keeping up with Colin. And that will build his confidence just a little bit as he tries to get past George Battersby, who is trying to keep pace with Colin Kennedy, who's trying to get past Will Inglis. About 2 tenths separating them. Will he think about a move under braking? He's going to whip it round the outside there, but Will Inglis defends the move. However, Colin Kennedy is still side by side with him as we head through turn 15, drops back just a little bit and sets himself up for a move into Vale, possibly sets himself up for the outside of that corner. We don't quite see what is going on under braking there. Will Inglis defending with all of his might as we head onto the start-finish straight. There's a train of 5 cars, pretty much, fighting for P2. Starting next lap, it's still Will Inglis running second position. He lost a little bit of time on such a hard-fought defensive drive heading through sector 1. Then will Colin be able to get the better of Will as we head through turn 2? In fact, Colin's car gets a little bit of oversteer, but it looks like Will Inglis carries a little bit too much speed into the corner and concedes 2 positions. Colin wouldn't have been entirely confident entering that corner, but he finds himself now running P2. George Battersby ahead of Will in P3, and Andrew Whitehead maybe thinking about a move, although he gets it a little bit wrong on the exit of turn 5, and now running P6 is Andrew Whitehead. This race hasn't worked out the way he would have wanted in this middle section. Then about 2 seconds behind his rival in race 1, Colin Kennedy currently running P2. He is now running P6 in half seconds now for Andrew Whitehead. He may be adjusting his focus for this race and maybe think about a podium later on. It's certainly on the cards. He has the pace for it, we know that, and anything can happen with so long to go in the race, with a pack battling so close together. Certainly a couple of incidents maybe on the cards for the cars in front of him. As we see Alan Matthews putting pressure on Will Inglis, putting pressure on George Battersby heading through Magnus Beckett's. George Battersby not looked as happy as some of the other drivers through sector 2, it must be said. Leaking just a little bit of time there, but he is making it back up in other places. Feeling very confident, obviously, in the car, as we saw heading into Brooklands. Under braking there, he certainly knows where his car has its strengths and weaknesses. Everyone in this race opting for the soft tyre, apart from Paul Millman once again. We didn't quite see what that medium tyre did for Paul towards the end of the race, unfortunately. So maybe not too much should be changing for this race heading towards the end of it then. But Matt Daley, meanwhile, out in front, about 8 seconds gap between him and Colin Kennedy, behind Colin Kennedy, setting his personal best lap of the race so far, and second only to Matt Daley in terms of best of the race, although I'm sure we'll see those times changing as we head into the later stages. The fuel is starting to get lighter, etc, etc. But Colin building a little bit of a gap to George Battersby in third. He is focusing on keeping P3 from Will Inglis. Will Inglis, who is focusing on keeping P4 from Alan Matthews. Alan Matthews trying to keep P5 from Andrew Whitehead, but we've seen Andrew Whitehead running quite wide on the exit of turn 5. He doesn't do it this time now, carrying much more speed on this occasion. They are near enough side by side heading into the braking zone then. Andrew Whitehead actually getting ahead a little bit before the braking zone and able to secure the move on the braking then as we head round turn 7 then. Who will be able to carry more speed? It looks like it will be Andrew Whitehead P5 for the keeping then. He will be trying to claw back a podium perhaps as he gets ever closer to Will Inglis then. Heading down towards turn 9, this pack of cars in the upper midfield staying relatively close together, doing a very good job of such a close battle for such a long part of the race already. We are halfway into the race, would you believe it or not. Just goes to show time flies when you are having fun. Heading through Magnus and Beckett is Andrew Whitehead. I'm sure he is having fun, although not quite as happy as he would have been with Colin Kennedy as he was in race 1. I'm sure he's enjoying the racing action, getting through the pack, trying to keep up with Will Inglis in P4 ahead of him. Goes to show, actually, just how much this battling does affect your race pace, because these are by no means slow drivers. As you see, Will Inglis going to get a little bit wrong on the exit of turn 15. He may be under threat from Andrew Whitehead into Vale there. He isn't, though, and is able to carry the speed through the chicane and onto the start-finish straight. Andrew Wyatt must be thinking about where he can plot his moves, and I'm sure he knows Colin Kennedy's strengths and weaknesses from race 1, but he'll be learning more and more about Will Inglis's racecraft around the Silverstone circuit as we head further into this race. But yeah, it does go to show just how much battling can affect your race pace, because Matt Daley is pretty much, I'd say, on par with Colin and Andrew Whitehead in terms of pace around the Silverstone circuit, but has built a 12-second gap as a result of enjoying the clean air out in front. Colin is trying to edge ever closer, and maybe towards the end of the race we will see those two battling for P1 as we did in the old days of the first part of this season's running. Those two were always at some point in the race neck and neck, side by side, battling for the top spots on the podium, eventually battling for the championship. Those two hasn't quite worked out in Matt Daley's favour on the second half of the year's running, but they certainly know how to race each other well. And Will Inglis still holding P4 from Andrew Whitehead as we head down towards turn 9. George Brook Battersby got a little bit of a gap as a result of this battle for P4 going on. Andrew looking very racy behind as we see Alan Matthews getting it very wide there, carrying as much speed as he does, maybe a little bit too much, maybe the tyres showing the first signs of degradation through turn 9. Barry Clayton looks like he kind of followed him there. A little bit of a sympathy, not quite a sympathy spin, but you know, echoing the car out in front, about half a second separating these two drivers now as we head down the Hamilton Straight. It's not the Hamilton Straight. I've been calling it the Hamilton Straight the entire race weekend. It's the Hangar Straight. I do apologise for that. I'm clearly going to have to go back and learn my Silverstone track naming there. I've got it a little bit wrong, and I do apologise for that mistake. George Brook Battersby still fighting P3 as we see P4, that battle for P4 ongoing in the foreground as they cut through Vale. Andrew Whitehead carrying as much speed as he dares on the final corner there, and that actually plays into his hand. They are side by side heading into turn 1. Will we see a collision like we saw between Will and George? We don't. That's a very nice move from Andrew up the inside to take P4 from Will Inglis, who now fights for it heading into turn 3. Heading through turn 4 then, about half a second separating those two drivers now. Who gets a better exit onto the Wellington Straight? Will Inglis be able to claw it back as we head down towards the braking zone for the Brooklands complex? It is anyone's game as Will Inglis now enjoys that slipstream. We see that in this race so far, Andrew Whitehead has had just about the upper hand in terms of straight line pace. In fact, out of the top 5 runners, out of anyone, Andrew Whitehead has had the fastest car in his straight line so far. And that gap extends to just over half a second now. And Colin Kennedy, speaking of Delta, has stayed pretty much neck and neck in terms of pace with Matt Daley. He hasn't closed up as much as he would have wanted to, and maybe thinking about settling in. It'll be a very nice result for Colin if he takes home 2 P2s from this weekend. But Andrew Whitehead will be thinking about more than that. He'll be thinking about now closing up on George Brook Battersby, who had difficulties at the later stages of the previous race. Maybe, hopefully, the same thing doesn't happen again, but maybe it will. And Andrew Whitehead is definitely thinking about a podium at this stage. Again, for him, that'll be a very nice point haul, taking home P1 and a podium if he can. The top 7 in this race staying much closer than we saw in race 1. 16 seconds separating the top 7, and 4 seconds covers P3 down to P7. Barry Clayton and Alan Matthews battling as we head into turn 15 with these two drivers. And Alan Matthews is pretty much on pace in terms of race pace so far. They set near enough identical best laps. Near enough, in fact, it was a much quicker previous lap for Barry Clayton, who is on the rear axle of Alan Matthews, it must be said. We've seen these two drivers have an immense amount of pace. Alan Matthews having a very good race 1. Barry Clayton showing some absolutely blistering lap times so far this weekend as they head into turn 3. Barry Clayton getting as close as he dares under braking, heading through turn 4, then he backs off just a little bit, maybe setting himself up nicely for the exit of turn 5, heading down that straight if he can carry as much speed as possible, thinks about a move into that braking zone. It is a favourite spot in terms of overtaking for the drivers, as we've seen so far in this championship in both these 156s and the Juliettas earlier on, just over a month ago in fact. But Colin Kennedy has in fact picked up the pace just a little bit, closer the gap between him and Matt Daley to about 6.6 seconds now. And George Brook Battersby is starting to feel the pressure from Andrew Whitehead as they head down towards turn 9. About 2 tenths separating them. Andrew Whitehead opting for the little bit of a wider line, maybe trying to carry just a little bit more speed there. George Brook Battersby having to defend as they enter Maggotts Beckett, 2 tenths separating them. It doesn't look like, and I'll try that again, doesn't look like Andrew Whitehead is entirely confident with the car through Maggotts Beckett, nor is George Brooks Battersby, though, it must be said, in comparison to the likes of Colin Kennedy, although I am sure in comparison to the likes of Colin Kennedy, it looks like any part of the racetrack is difficult, but it's side by side for George and Andrew. Andrew is trying to take the move under braking, then they are side by side, but he makes that move stick under braking into turn 15, and they are now once again just a plate, or rather just a few seconds separating Colin Kennedy and Andrew Whitehead as we start the next lap with Colin. It is Colin Kennedy P2, Andrew Whitehead P3. This battle that we saw in race 1 may be happening later on in the race, just not for the same position. We'll see Willing List didn't have an amazing lap that time round. Alan Matthews and Barry Clayton have been able to catch up, and maybe a mistake has forced this battle to take place. This battle for what is now P5 for Alan Matthews and Barry Clayton as they head down towards, through turn 2, down towards turn 3. They are near enough, 3 wide. Alan Matthews, beautiful move there, switches to the inside line, takes P5 from Willing Bliss. P6 taken by Barry Clayton as well through turn 4. Will he be able to make the move back in turn 5? They are side by side, very close together, runs quite a lot of speed through turn 5, able to run Barry Clayton and Alan Matthews wide to take back P5. That is a beautiful turn 4 and turn 5 for Will Inglis there, beautifully executed, and certainly shows that he is up for a fight. Certainly shows these two drivers that he is by no means complacent as he heads through Brooklands now. Will we see these two heading 3 wide through turn 9 once again? For my sake, I hope it's not too action-packed, because my voice is starting to go just a little bit now, unfortunately, as we see Alan Matthews hangs it around the outside. Barry Clayton opting to carry as much speed as they can. In fact, they're going to be 3 wide as they head into Maggotts Beckett, although Barry Clayton is just a little bit too far back, but they are certainly putting a lot of pressure under each other, doing a very good job to keep the nose clean through Maggotts and Beckett, set themselves up for the long back straight. The gap has built up just a little bit there, but very nice driving from these drivers who keep the nose clean while battling each other so intensely at this stage in the race. Where has the time gone? We've got just about 5 minutes left in this race. What a brilliant race this has been so far, and it looks like the action is going to carry on long into this race. Matt Daley was having issues, obviously, with his car or setup in the previous race. He's coming on some lap traffic there. It's actually the first bit of lap traffic we have seen, so everyone doing a very nice job of being on the pace so far, as we see him getting nicely past. That looks to be Rosie Hodson there. But yes, Matt Daley then, we saw him having issues earlier on in the race. Hopefully that doesn't rear its head then, because he's on for a very nice victory so far. As we see, Will Inglis is having to defend for P5 once again, heading down towards turn 3. As we see, Alan Matthews set himself up for the inside line there, has to avoid the car of Will Inglis, and he's now side by side with Barry Clayton entering turn 4. Barry Clayton looks like he's had to concede the position there, thinking about a move, wasn't going to stick, unfortunately, and Will Inglis can breathe just a little bit of a sigh of relief as these two, as we've seen not only in this championship, not only in this part of the season, but in the previous part of the season as well. Barry Clayton and Alan Matthews can battle each other immensely well. Some of my most enjoyable commentary has been on some of the most enjoyable races that I've commented on have been battles between Alan Matthews and Barry Clayton for extended periods of time. I certainly enjoy watching it, and I hope you are as well, as they are only 0.4 of a second apart. Unfortunately, it all goes wrong for Barry Clayton. Not sure if that was a little bit of a brake balance issue maybe, or the car just coming away from him on corner exit there, catching a little bit of the grass perhaps, but for whatever reason that brings an end to Barry Clayton's charge towards P5 at this stage in the race. Will Harper maybe sees Barry Clayton up in front. If he has a couple more issues, he can think about taking home P7. Will Harper running P8, securing a couple of points at this point, this stage in the race rather, having had that unfortunate incident at turn 1 of lap 1. Andrew Whitehead is looking a little bit more comfortable out in P3 then, with George Brook Battersby about a second and a lapped car behind Andrew. And these two have been able to split away from this battle for P5 that is still ongoing between Will Inglis and Alan Matthews. we have to give a mention to Guy Swarbrick, who is currently leading the AM race and battling from Rob Whitney. So this is a battle for P1 in the AM race as we enter the final couple of laps of this race. In fact, this will be the penultimate lap of this race between these two drivers then. As we head into turn 15, there's about half a second separating them. And less than that separating Will Inglis and Alan Matthews as they head into turn 3. As we see Rosie Hosing getting out of the way of these two drivers very nicely there. So allow these two to carry on their battle. But we have plenty of battles going on track at this stage in the race, which is something that we enjoy seeing as we see Guy Swarbrick, the car, getting away from just a little bit there. It looks like a little bit of oversteer was starting to show, starting to rear its ugly head as they start another lap then. Rob Whitney 3/10 quicker on this occasion, heading into turn 1. Opting for a little bit of a wider line as they head through the sweeping left-hander of turn 2 once we're in a Formula car. It's barely a corner at that stage, but it is still something that they have to contend with here in these 156 WTCC. Rob Whitney thinking about a move up the inside, and they come together through turn 4, unfortunately. I'm not quite sure what to make of that one. Looks like Rob Whitney stuck a nose in as Guy Swarbrick left the door open just a little bit there, and they are side by side, and Rob Whitney looks like concedes the position. So that is nice to see between these two, enjoying their battle on the penultimate lap of the race. And someone who is enjoying the penultimate lap of this race is Matt Daley, who Colin Kennedy is closing in on him ever so slightly, but it won't be enough at this stage. Unfortunately, Matt Daley currently running P1. Colin Kennedy is actually, as I say that, is still making a couple of tenths every now and again, trying to eke ever closer. If the mistake comes on the final lap of the race, it is still possibly up for grabs for Colin. Speaking of up for grabs, though, Alan Matthews will be feeling like it is maybe no longer up for grabs after such an intense battle going on for so many laps. Will Inglis is starting to run away just a little bit now, about a second separating them as they head into Vale there. Will Inglis a little bit tighter on corner entry that time round, but these two are still battling each other neck and neck through Maggott and Beckett's then, and down the start, not the start finish straight, down the back straight. Rob Whitney will be looking for that all-important slipstream then. He is echoing Guy Swarbrick's every move down that start finish straight, following that outside line, trying to enjoy as much slipstream as he can, setting himself up for T15. He thinks about a move down the inside under braking there, but it looks like Guy Swarbrick's just a little bit too far out in front. Although, is he though? He was a little bit better under braking. They are near enough side by side as they head down towards Vale, as we see Matt Daley is currently heading down towards the turn 9 part of the circuit. And these two are getting ready to start their final lap, and they're pretty much side by side. Rob Whitney running just a little bit wide, trying to carry so much speed to get past Guy Swarbrick on what is now the final lap. They head into turn 1. He is a little bit too far back, unfortunately, to make a move this time round. As they head in towards turn 2, about 3/10 separating them. It is anyone's game for the moment. We're going to have to switch back to focus on the lead of the pro race, but the lead for the AM race looks like it was nearly settled through that corner. Then Guy Swarbrick getting it a little bit wrong, outbraking himself, gets the car a little bit untidy. They are going to be side by side as they head through turn 5. Rob Whitney overtakes him. Guy Swarbrick getting it a little bit wrong and heads down the Wellington Straight in the lead of the AM race. Well done to Rob Whitney, who was able to just make Guy Swarbrick crack under pressure on the very final part of the race. And speaking of the final part of the race, it is Matt Daley heading through Vale. He has led a brilliant race. Colin Kennedy still only 3 seconds behind, though. He really capitalised on other people's errors on lap 1 and was able to find his way up in turn 1 from further back on the grid. And he crosses the line to take home P1. Excellent job from Matt Daley there, closely followed by Colin Kennedy. There is 2 P2s for Colin this weekend. He takes home an impressive amount of points this weekend, more than anyone this weekend. In fact, no, I'm wrong there, because Andrew Whitehead takes home P3. George Brook Battersby close behind in P4, and Will Inglis in P5. My voice is really starting to struggle now. It has been such an exciting pair of races, but I am glad that that is the case, because Silverstone never fails to deliver, especially with these impressive drivers. Alan Matthews taking home P6, Barry Clayton, after those misfortunes a few laps ago, taking home P7. Will Harper, after that incident in lap 1, able to secure some additional points from this race weekend, taking home P8. With Rob Whitney leading the AM race then, after a hard-fought battle with Guy Swarbrick that lasted for a few laps there, heads through Vale in P9. And will be able to head round the final corner and secure himself that victory. So well done to Rob and Guy Strawbrick for such an enjoyable battle there. And that rounds out the point scorers for this race. Steve Knight coming home P11, Paul Millman's coming home P12, and Rosie Hodson coming home P13. Commiserations to Jack Hodson, by the way, who looks like he was having a few issues with his PC setup. Such are the challenges of virtual racing, as we see the parade lap with Matt Daley and Colin Kennedy. No donuts this time round, although we looks like that parade lap is coming to an end for these two. Maybe we are about to get donuts. Come on, Matt, do some donuts. There we go, on cue. Some nice donuts to round out our very enjoyable weekend here in Silverstone. I hope you enjoyed watching it as much as I enjoyed commentating it. Once again, these touring cars here at Silverstone never failing to deliver. You can look forward to more touring car action in a couple of weeks when we join you once again. So until then, I hope you've enjoyed this racing, and I will catch you then. Goodbye. See that? I picked the right car this time as well. You got to see some enjoyable 156s at the very end of the stream there. So well done. I will get back to that. You can enjoy looking at those very nice liveries once again, because yeah, I've realised what car I'm commentating on this time.